I'm Pam, a mother, runner, business owner, and the host of the I Work For Me podcast. This podcast shares stories from the world of entrepreneurship because starting a business doesn't have to feel like a far-off dream, and running one shouldn't feel like a nightmare. Good morning. Today we have Diane. Diane is a business strategist for female entrepreneurs. Simply put, she works alongside her clients to shift them from being the COE, chief of everything in their business, to being the CEO of their business. Diane, welcome so much to I Work For Me. And how are you doing this morning?
Thanks, Pam. Great intro. I'm doing well today. It's Monday.
Isn't it just? So, Diane, you're an entrepreneur. How long have you been in business for yourself?
Well, that's a tricky one. All right. Well, it's tricky, but it's not tricky. I left corporate and then freelanced for many years. So in terms of my own business, like not relying on that freelance culture where somebody else is looking for the work for you, because I think that's a very interesting conversation, I'm almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years now in actual fact, this month it's 3 years. So
congratulations.
Yeah, 3 years. And I made the shift 3 years ago to saying I can't be waiting because when you're a freelancer, you're waiting for the phone to ring all the time.
Okay.
I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Well, no, because I'm kind of going, well, how does freelance differ to being a entrepreneur or something?
Remember, so when you're freelancing, and the freelancing work that I did was the companies I freelance for, the organizations I freelance for, the people I did, they went out and got the work. I never went to get the work. And then they would just subcontract me in, freelance me in to come and do the work. So I had no control over how they were selling to the clients. Also with two of them, whether I would actually get the work or not, because they had like a roster system. So it wasn't like, you're an expert in this and therefore we're going to give it to you. It would be, oh no, so-and-so hasn't had work for a couple of months, let's give it to them. And then you'd have to wait for that roster system. Does that make sense to you, Pam?
Yes. Okay. So it's almost like you were working for an agency and the agency decided where you fit in. Okay. So, so going from corporate to the agency type space, and then from the agency completely on your own, where you now 100% reliant on your own income.
Yes. Okay. Which I think
big difference,
no, it's a massive difference. You see, and for me, if I had to say to you what's the biggest difference, and most probably you're going to ask me that later on, but I'll answer it now, is that in the agency, remember, it didn't matter whether they got paid or not. I got paid. Do you know what I mean? Like I put in my invoice and a week later, my money was in my bank account. I didn't have to wait whether they were paid by the client. Whereas in your own business, you're waiting for the client to pay whatever. But the bigger difference, because it was a risk thing for me, you know what I mean? Like that was less risky. But if I put it into a nutshell for you, the thing that actually triggered me to go on my own was a couple of things. But one of the biggest things that triggered me is I was standing in front of a client and I was paid, I think, now it sounds like good money, please don't get me wrong. I was paid something like 15,000 Rand to do the work, you know what I mean? But they made 240,000 Rand.
The agency?
Yes, the agency made 240 and I made 15, all right? And nobody else could do that work. So it wasn't like they could go and get somebody else to do that work. It actually had to come to me for many different reasons. I had to do it for them. And it was just that. And I mean, I would never have known, but the client made a comment about how much they paid. And I came home and I was pretty pissed off. You know what I mean? Like okay, I made good money, but nowhere near what I could have been making. And I think it was that catalytic shift for me in terms of my mindset, in terms of going, but why am I worried about the risk? Do you know what I mean? Like what's going on? But anyway, so yeah, quite interesting.
It's such an amazing thing to hear you say, because so few people, and especially when you're an entrepreneur, believe in your self-value and how much I'm worth. And I mean, someone else understands your value, and someone can sell you for 240,000 Rand, and yet
Correct.
we're quite happy to accept 15,000 until that spotlight was whatever. The spotlight was put on that, how much you valued yourself. How
Yep.
incredible to be exposed to that. How did that make you feel, though, from a value point of view?
I think I got that, and I am going to answer you in like a slightly different way, because I often say this on social media. Hi, my name's Diane, and I'm a recovering imposter syndrome addict, and I'm on day 15, or I can see you laughing. On day 15, I'm on day 5, you know, and it was just that again. I'd allowed this absolute imposter syndrome to take over. This, I'm not good enough. You know, I'm not valuing myself at the point where I should be. And it is so difficult. And I think what's interesting, Pam, is because my assumption is you have both men and women who listen to the podcast.
Yes.
Is that it is certainly something that women struggle with far more than men. We far more than a man struggles with our self-value equation. I can give you 100 examples. Do you know what I mean? Like, we go down this rabbit hole around our self-value. A man says, this is my price, take it or leave it. If you want to negotiate, that's fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
A woman goes into, should I charge them this? What should I add to this? Are they going to like me? Is this enough? What's everybody going to think when I put that price out there? And it is. And look, I mean, I work with that a lot with clients, but I work with that a lot in myself in terms of, and it doesn't matter whether you're working for yourself as an entrepreneur or you're in a business, in a company where you're working for somebody else. We just tend to undervalue ourselves. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's ingrained.
You've opened up a can of worms for me, because I'm kind of thinking, sure, men must feel that way. So I'm going on a mission, not right now, but I'm going to have to figure out the truth of what you're saying. Because I know for a fact that women feel the way you say. And I'm not going to even question that, because I myself have gone through it, and I speak to very many friends. But is it because we've only spoken to friends, and women are a lot more open with those unsureties that we just don't get to hear about it from men? Or do men really believe that? So, you know, I'm going to put the jury out on that one, and I'll definitely
put the jury out. Come back to me with your research.
So I think that I think it's a really good topic to investigate. Anyway, so that's one thing. But as I'm listening to you and you're talking about what you're doing and the fact that the values that you have and what you value yourself and the amount of people you've spoken to, I'm thinking, so what is it that you actually do? I mean, you say chief of everything to the CEO, chief executive officer, but how do you do that? And what is it that you do? And what were you doing in corporate? What did you do in freelance? And what are you doing now?
Okay, so let's go back to my corporate days. So I have to say that a lot of the stuff I'm finding that I'm using now comes both from my corporate days, but actually, interestingly enough, Pam, comes from my childhood, because my parents were entrepreneurs and even my grandparents were entrepreneurs. So I'm a third generation entrepreneur, which is quite interesting because there aren't very many of us. And I'm a third generation female entrepreneur, which is almost unheard of, because both my grandmothers were entrepreneurs. My mother was an entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur.
In the blood,
So
in the blood.
It's complete. I said, it feels like my homecoming. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of this homecoming. So in corporate, I did a couple of different things, but towards the latter parts of my corporate career, I worked as a project manager. I worked as very client-facing, but very strategically client-facing with the client. So working a lot on their strategies, working a lot on looking at things like what's the information, and I'm using information because it can get quite technical, but looking at their insights in their business and how to drive their business forward based on their insights. So I always explain it to people. I worked in predictive analytics, and basically we would tell people what to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what your data is showing you what to do. So I was exposed to a lot of different clients. People always think that I worked at a lot of different places. No, I never did. I just was lucky enough that I was placed in different clients, and worked quite a lot in the government. And then in my freelance, I went into freelancing in two areas. I freelance facilitated training, but leadership training. So stuff like strategic performance management. Now that's different to performance managing staff. I would do that, but that's not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is at a business level. What are you measuring, and what's that showing you, and how should you be measuring that, right? How do you use those results? So I would facilitate that. And then a lot of project management facilitation, a lot of conflict management facilitation. So you can see leadership kind of stuff at the leadership level, but not, funnily enough, at the top level of organizations. Yes and no, but more at that middle management level. And then I freelance also as a strategist. So doing strategy for businesses. Do you know what I mean? Coming in, working out strategic intent, putting together the projects that now have to be done, not delivering them, but kind of coming in every now and again just to see how they go. So that was my freelance stuff. And then now in my business, it's taking all that stuff and really understanding, because I work with women. And I always say this, and women enter entrepreneurship through a side door. Women do not enter often through the front door. I have yet to meet very many female entrepreneurs who grew up wanting to own their own business and take over the world. Right? I have met very few of them. They come to it through different ways. They wanted to spend more time with their children, but there had to be money to be able to do that. So they started a business, on the side that has now grown. Or if we take my business partner as an example, she was a stay-at-home mom. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom for her children. They traveled, they lived overseas. When her children left home, she now sat back and went, what do I do? Became an entrepreneur. Some women get retrenched, some women get divorced, and they come to entrepreneurship. But what that means very often is that they have not been exposed to the tools they need as a CEO. Even if they worked in corporates, very seldom were they in the conversations that set the strategy. They were in the conversations, they were either taking, and it's going to sound really sexist, but most women understand what I mean. They were taking the minutes in those conversations. They were not part of those conversations, all right? And they worked in organizations to deliver on the strategy, but not the thinking behind the strategy. And that's when you were asking me, what do I do with women? It's getting them to step into the role of strategically understanding what they need to be doing in their business, right? Move out of their own way, because they often, most of us as entrepreneurs, we're in our own way, and make the decision to say, what does success look like for me? And I don't work with hobbyists. I say that with all honesty. I don't work with hobbyists. I don't work with the woman who wants to do her business 3 hours a day and it is for play money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a hobby that turned into a business, and now you understand what I mean, Pam. But I'm wanting to have a little, no, those are not the women I work with. The women I work with are driven, and they're wanting to create, it doesn't have to be a big business. It can stay a solopreneur business, but they're wanting to be successful and to create wealth for themselves. but they don't know how to do it. Do you know what I mean? And the internet tells them it's very easy. The internet says do ABC and then you're going to be a multimillionaire, which is utter bullshit. But anyway, and I'm there to guide them. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do this? What kind of questions do you ask? What kind of things do you have to implement in your business to actually be a CEO? You know, like, what does that look like? So that's the work I do. So it's taking all my experience from my past and just packaging everything together and trying to make it easy. I'll say that.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated because as I hear you speak, I recognize the spaces that you speak of. You know, being the one taking the minutes, being the one implementing, being the one making sure things are. And as an entrepreneur myself, I kind of go, how often I sit up and I go, so what is the next step and how do I take it? And yes, I've been coached and yes, I've had a business coach and that kind of thing, but it's okay to write a business plan and get that stuff sorted out. But having the pretty of writing a business plan, we can all do that, but having the conversation to understand the implementation and the strategy behind it is a different space, isn't it?
Completely. So let me give you an example, all right? There's a question I ask at the beginning of a business journey, and please don't misunderstand me. I agree with a business plan in some cases, but a lot of times people are being asked to create a business plan that there's no necessity for the business plan. A business plan goes to a bank to give you money, goes to an investor, whatever.
Okay.
You need a strategic plan.
Okay. So are you telling me, because now this is like completely foreign space, you're telling me that unless you're going to actually go and get finance, there's no real need for a business plan. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. It depends on what your business plan is covering.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Depends on your business plan
Carry
is
on.
covering. So one of the first questions I ask the entrepreneur to do is the following for me, is to answer this two questions for me. Well, actually, it's three questions or four. Let's see how we go. So the first one is this one. Are you building a legacy business or are you building a business to sell? It's a very strategic question right up front in your business. Now, if you're building a legacy business, that means a business that you're wanting to be involved in for the long term, for the long haul. All right. Maybe my husband, for instance, is creating a legacy business for our children. All right. It's a legacy business with his children. He's not creating it to sell it. All right. But if you say to me, actually, I'm creating a business that I'm wanting to sell, all right, the strategy is completely different in the two businesses right from day one. It's diabolically different to each other, right? And most people say everybody should create a business to sell. Not particularly. It's dependent on you, you know. So I've worked with businesses where right up front we've set it up to be sold, you know what I mean? And there's a specific strategy we're following around that. And then I've worked with businesses who are legacy businesses. You know what I mean? Like this is my business that I'm wanting to be. And when I say legacy, it doesn't have to be that it's for the rest of your life. It's a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. So that's the first one. Second thing is, second question is this one. What do you want this team that works with you to look like? Now, people always look at me and they say, but good God, I'm right at the beginning of my business. How do I know that? So are you wanting to build a business with a big team, or are you wanting to build a lean business? That there will be a team, but it looks different, right? Now, these are questions that people they think of them too late down the road rather than at the beginning of the road, right? And then the fourth one I always ask is, how much do you actually want to work? Because there's your value. How much do you want to work? Okay. Are you wanting to work 5 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever? How much I actually don't start with how much you want to work. I start with, why did you start this business? And most people, it's freedom. Then we have to define what freedom means for you. And then we work backwards from there. So if you started a business for freedom and you're wanting to spend more time, let's say, with your children, which is originally why I gave up my corporate career, is that then we can't create a business that you're going to be working 7 days a week. And maybe you're going to do the same stuff as what you thought you were going to do, but your target market's going to be different and your pricing is going to be different, because you may go to upper level pricing immediately because you want to integrate. I hope that answers part of your question, Pam.
No, it is. I'm actually sitting here and I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I'm going, wow. Not having a business plan. These are the questions. Although you went 1, 2, 4, so I'm just going to claim this now. And to me, this is probably some of the most detailed information as an entrepreneur. As I said, I've been working for 30 years in my life. And through that time, I've done the entrepreneurial thing a couple of times, and I've done the side hustle, and I've done the full-on corporate, and I've been retrenched and started working, and everything, and all the things you're talking about make sense. So falling into entrepreneurship, yes, because it wasn't something that I chose, yet also blessed because my parents were entrepreneurs. But then legacy and sell. I mean, to even consider that up front, why would I want a legacy business, or why would I want a business to sell? Those are two very, very pertinent questions. And to have that question when you first start makes sense. I mean, why would you not want to have that question up front? So, yeah. And then you talk about, so it's the legacy sell, and then what it is that you want to do and why it is that you want to do it. And freedom, please. I don't know a single entrepreneur that has freedom of anything. I want financial freedom, or I want freedom of time, or I want freedom of this. You don't have any freedom, chicken, especially in the beginning. But I mean, the idea is, and I love where you talk about going, this is where we start and where is it that we want to get to. So everything that you're talking about makes so much sense. And I'm going, okay, so now we don't need a business plan, but we need to follow all these other bits and pieces that suddenly I've never thought of, which means that if I haven't thought of it, I've been running my own business for a while, it means that, oh man, maybe I need to get back to the drawing board. So,
and so a lot of the women that I work with, Pam, are in the situation you're in. Okay. And this is the way that I explain it. It doesn't, because I haven't kind of come up, and maybe some clever copywriting person will listen to this podcast, and then feel free, please, to text me and let me know how to word this properly. But I'm finding that the people I'm working with, their businesses are in the terrible twos or the furious fives. Okay, now I want you to imagine, if you are a mother, what the terrible twos are like. Your child has got they've kind of discovered the world, and they're starting to throw these hectic tantrums, okay? Because they want to be a little bit more independent, you know what I mean? They want to dress themselves, they want to do whatever. So they've tasted a bit of success, and now they're throwing the tantrum as to what is the next level. Or the furious fives are, now I'm wanting to just break free. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm at that, because that's at the next level. We won't talk about teenagers, but a lot of the women that I work with, this is where they are in their businesses. Okay, they've tasted success. And ladies, I know this is a podcast, so I want you to imagine that I've got like a glass ceiling on top of my head, and now you're hitting that ceiling, okay? And your business is saying to you, or your soul is saying to you, hit through the ceiling, but you have no idea how to do that, because things have to change for you to go to the next level. You cannot be doing the same stuff you were doing. And that's often the woman I'm working with. Do you know what I mean? Like, what does that look like? What do you mean, Diane, that I need to outsource a whole lot of this stuff? What do you mean, Diane, that I have to do this? All right. And then often, Pam, like you're saying, we are going back to the drawing board. All right. You didn't do this work at the beginning. let's reverse engineer it. Let's take a deep breath. Let's just start to think about what we're going to do. And one of the things that one of my coaches taught me is, which is something that a lot of people struggle with, is which of your darlings are we going to kill off when we're at that stage of the business? Now, what that means is, so I can hear the intake of breath, because you know what I mean.
It's like asking me to choose one of my children. I mean, how do you one of your children?
So it's like people have these offerings, you know what I mean? Whatever it looks like, products, whatever. And some of them they love doing, but they either cost them a lot of time or they're not making money, you know, and there could be a number of other things. And then we have to take a strategic decision on saying, well, are you in business or are you, you know what I mean? Like, what's happening here? Is this a hobby or is this a business? And if it's a business, well, and I've had to do that. Please don't misunderstand me. I've had to take stuff away that I really love doing. Do you know what I mean? But when I looked at how much money I was making from it, yes, I was making an impact, but it was costing me Saturdays and Sundays and whatever. And like you said, I'm in this for freedom. I don't want to be working 7 days a week. It's that, and those are those are hard conversations, but they're conversations that you want to have with somebody who has experience in having these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because as you're talking, I mean, I'm constantly thinking about entrepreneurship and how businesses develop and how people think about their businesses and how they take the next steps. And one of the big things is that always comes is, I could just be another one of so many people doing exactly the same thing. And then there's the question of how do you stand out? How do you make yourself different to everyone else? And then I keep reminding myself, the pie is huge. We have, I'm going to have to get the actual population count, but just thinking about how many people there are, there is no ways. And I'm going to use Coca-Cola as an example, because they are huge, but not everybody likes Coke. People like Tab or Pepsi or Fanta or Sprite or 10 gazillions of other kinds of product. What product are you selling? And who is your market? And know that even if you are a Coca-Cola, there can be 10 other Coca-Colas on the shelf.
Completely.
And it was such an eye-opener for me. And listening to you speak now, I keep going, yes, but you've got to know how you're going to position yourself on that shelf with all the rest of the Coca-Colas. So
completely.
Such a lovely conversation to have, and such an eye-opening space to go, I just need to figure it out. I need to know how to position myself, but I can't do it on my own necessarily. So maybe I can. And if I'm one of the lucky ones, but not every entrepreneur can, because you get so bogged down, as you were saying, by the stuff, and suddenly I've got to outsource. What am I going to outsource? I've got to do it all myself, because there's no possible way anyone could do it as well as me, or as quick as me, or as fast as me, or as clever as me. Or, yeah, so I get you 100%. But then
completely
conversation with someone like you and go, so what do I outsource that makes sense, so that I can get the right freedom? So
if we go back to Coca-Cola example, I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with. Do you know what I mean? Like this pie, everybody's competing. But I want you to think about it this way. Imagine if Coca-Cola did not exist and you were putting something to market that was the first Coca-Cola. How difficult that actually is. Do you know what I mean? That is big money. That's big money to do that, to take particularly in, let's say, a South African context, because people are very loyal, to go and put something into the market that's never been done before. The more there is the noise in the market around what you do, in actual fact, the easier it is for you, because people are already aware of things like Coca-Cola, the service that you do, you know, the kind of thing they could get from you. Now it is like you said, how do I position myself slightly differently to everybody else? you know, and how do I then sneakily piggyback onto Coca-Cola? You know what I mean? Like piggyback onto something that they're doing. If you're South African and you're listening to this, we see Nando's doing that amazingly well all the time.
Brilliantly.
Do you know what I mean? Like everybody just, Nando's never ever goes and thinks out their own material. They just
piggyback,
go on social media and they take something from social media. They look at what their competitors are doing and they just adjust it. So it's kind of, instead of being scared all the time, it's kind of just looking at stuff. So let me share something, and I've had to do that work in the last month, okay, on myself. You know, that's what I'm saying, imposter syndrome. So of course, my social media feed on Facebook, on Instagram, is filled with what? Business coaches advertising their services to me. It's overwhelming. But why? Because that's what I'm interested in. So my feed is filled with that. So I'm like, holy shit, all these people are doing this stuff and I can't be, you know, like what do I do? There's no space in the market.
I'm one in a million. Yeah.
I'm one in a million, whatever. Went and had a look at it. And according to stats, and I'm a complete stats geek, according to statistics, there's only 20,000 official, let's call them official, you know, like their websites say it, their whatever. There's only about 20,000 official business coaches in the world. Not in South Africa, not in the UK. 20,000 people who market themselves as strategic business coaches or just business coaches. I'm like, okay, but it just happens to be that they're on my feed. Do you know what I mean? But then I go and look at my husband's feed, and his feed is completely different to mine. He doesn't see one. So it's like, okay, step back, get perspective,
yes,
and then come back again. And I think that's the big thing about working with somebody like me, is to give you perspective.
Well, just listening to you say about your feed, because I'll be doing something and suddenly, I'm sure Siri's listening to me, because suddenly everything that's on my feed, whether it's Instagram, social, Facebook, LinkedIn, it's all there. And you kind of go, wow, everybody knows that this is what I'm looking for. But you're 100% right, but it's what I'm interested in. So the minute I put branding into a hashtag, everything branding related lands in my lap. And when you start looking at the stats, as you say, the 20,000 business coaches, 20,000 business coaches sounds like a huge amount. But then you think of the billions of businesses out there, 20,000 ain't that much. You still land 100, 200, 300 clients, and still there would be stuff left for everyone else.
Yeah. So can I give you another stat? Can I give you another stat? But this one you have to hold on to something when I give it to you, because
hang on, let me sit down. Okay, okay.
It's a shocking one. So there's 20,000 business coaches in the world. 14,000 women per day in the United States start a business.
14,000 per day.
Per day.
There aren't that many people in the world.
I'm going to take it down to say to you, most probably that stat is incorrect, because it's a person who had a business who's opened a new location, whatever, it doesn't matter, all right? Even if it's 1,000 women a day who are starting a business just in the US, well, that means, you know, within 20 days, there's 20,000. That means each business coach in the whole world could have a new client, right?
Exactly.
And in Africa, that stat is even more crazy. That, but again, it's subsistence businesses, it's stuff like that. But that again is perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like taking one number and instead of just looking at that number, putting it into perspective with another number.
Yes.
And then you don't become overwhelmed. Then you're like, well, there's more than enough for everybody. So let me go out and do my thing, because, yeah. And it's fine also to not try and be diabolically different to everybody else. I also say that to my entrepreneurs. You know, everybody's trying to be unique, okay? You're not a snowflake. You're not going to be unique. Trust me, somebody out there is doing what you're doing. Even if they're copying you, so then there's the thing. But it is perspective, and it keeps coming back to that word in this conversation, but it's perspective. It's about getting perspective.
But I think that it's really important for entrepreneurs to have that perspective, to understand that on your journey, you're going to come into contact with people that are exactly like you. On your journey, you're going to come into contact with people that are completely different to you, but they're all in the same business.
Yes.
And how do you become a success? How do you make a success of what it is that you're doing? Because, so getting back to the original conversation of entrepreneurship. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I mean, you've probably got 10 gazillion stories from 10 gazillion different people, but your entrepreneurship journey has been 3 years in the going. You decided to start doing it on your own because you didn't like the freelance process and all that sort of thing. What is it that keeps you going? So you're 3 years in. What gets you up? How do you go, right, I'm doing it today?
Two things, I think. The first one is my big why.
Okay.
And my big why is that the more I can have women step into wealth, right, the more I will change the world. And I only need to do that one woman at a time.
And I'm assuming you're talking about their own independent wealth.
Yes. So it's this. So we have in our business, well, in my business, and I now have a partner, but in our business, our big why is this: 1,000 female millionaires. 1,000 female millionaires, right? If we can make 1,000 female millionaires, that's 1 billion, right? Now you'll notice that I haven't said a currency, right? Because
it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. It's 1,000 female millionaires through their businesses, right? And when I say millionaires, I don't mean that they're turning a million, that they, like you said, they've got $1 million. It's $1 million in assets that they have. Well, then I've changed the face of the world, right? That's the thing that makes me get up every morning. Do you know what I mean? Like that. And that we're living in times of, I love change. Okay, so I mean, I think that's the other reason I get up. I love change. I don't like change in my personal life. Please don't misunderstand, because everybody always thinks I love change. I'm very routine driven in my personal life. I don't like change in my personal life, but I've always worked in change throughout my career. I've always worked in change. And because when you're working at strategy, you're changing. You've got to change.
But it's change for good. And it's change for improvement and for benefit.
Completely, not change for the sake of changing. So the thing is that what's getting me up at the moment is that I just see possibility for I don't even want to say the woman I work with, but like somebody will comment in a group and I will see the possibility for her before she can see it. Just because that's the way my brain works. Do you know what I mean? Like she'll go, I'm thinking about doing this, and I'll be like, I'm working with 2 ladies at the moment where they cannot see the possibility of their business. I'm scaring them. I'm trying not to scare them, but I can see their possibility. All right. And it's that gets me up. You know what I mean? Like, get your ass out of bed. You've got to make a difference. You know, people need you. They need to see the possibility for themselves, because it's often difficult for us to see our own possibility.
But don't you find, Diane, because I've seen this so many times, where people don't see the wood for the trees. So you get so invested and so involved in the everyday. And once again, the COE versus the CEO, where you are getting involved with every step of every project that you're working on, that you just get blinded to the big picture. And you need someone like you to kind of give you a smack in the face and go, wake up, look at the big picture and see how you can make those changes.
Completely, because the one thing you don't want, and that we see, I don't want to use the word often, but I do see it often, is that you're so bogged down in this business, okay, and somebody else who is a competitor of yours has seen the potential in your business, and they are thinking far more strategically than what you are. And then the rug is pulled out from underneath you because there's suddenly this new person on the horizon that you never considered. Do you know what I mean? Like they watching you in your business. They're going, that's a pretty good business. Let's sign up for everything she does. Let's watch every Facebook Live she does. Let's listen to every podcast she does. And you're not realizing that what they're doing is they're checking you out. I mean, I do it with other people. I mean, I'm perfectly honest. I do that with some people. There are people that I want to become. Do you know what I mean? And I follow everything of theirs. But if you're bogged down, you won't see that threat coming soon enough. And then suddenly there's a side. So let's use a stupid example, right? Let's use a stupid example. I'm going to use an example. It's not a client example. There's somebody that I know, she's not a client. There's somebody that I know who got so bogged down in her business. She has an event business and she was doing something quite unique in her event business. And the clients were raving about it and she was posting it on Facebook and she was whatever. But she wasn't strategically thinking about protecting what she was doing or how she was posting it. She was just so excited that she's doing this stuff. What do you think was happening? There was another event company on the side watching her, all right? And suddenly she started to lose deals. And she was like, but why am I losing these deals? Because the other person, and it's not a big business, but the other person watched you, took note of things like, thanks, Pam, for the printing that you did for me last week. Do you know what I mean? Thanks, so-and-so, for the hiring services that you gave to me. And all they did was they went and they undercut her. Do you know what I mean? They went there. And I said, yeah, because you were the COE, you were the chief of everything. Do you know what I mean? And you were not looking at this from a strategic point of saying, okay, what do I share? Do you know what I mean? Like how do I share this and get the hiring people to share on their profile, but don't get them to tag you? Do you know what I mean? So that I've got to be watching both of them to make the connection. And so I hope that's a good example, because it's not a big business example. People don't understand that it's not only big business. Everybody's watching everybody else.
Absolutely. And the thing is that there's always been that thing, look what your competitors are doing. Check out who else is in the market. And I've also been one of those going, no one could ever be as amazing as me, which can sometimes backfire, as you say. But it's being aware of what they're doing, not necessarily following them, not necessarily doing what they're doing. Once again, looking at the big picture, seeing the wood for the trees. That's a really, really important lesson to learn, that you need to be aware of what's going on out there. Yes, you could be just 1 in 20,000, but you don't want to keep losing to the other 19,000 if you're not doing it correctly.
Completely. And now somebody listening to this is going to go, oh my goodness, I need to get my competitor strategy, and they're gonna go down that rabbit hole. Do you know what I mean? Don't do that either. Just kind of figure out, there's 3 people I want to watch, cut out all the rest of the noise. Do you know what I mean? And just say, and either go, that's somebody who's in the same line as me and I see that I'm losing business to them, so let's just kind of have a look at what they're doing. Or it could be, this is who I'm aspiring to be. Do you know what I mean? So let's follow that person. And from an aspirational point of view, let's look at what I can do.
So once again, this brings you back to your strategy, doesn't it? I mean, this is where we're right in the beginning. Is it so how important? So what is it that I want to achieve? What is it that I want to get to? What is it? Am I going to be a legacy? Am I going to be able to sell? Is it for freedom? Because that will determine how you're going to manage. I think that also with social media being the way it is, you'll get overwhelmed. I mean, there's so much information.
Completely.
You end up going down a rabbit hole, which is also just as bad, because you go down a rabbit hole that means that you start believing the imposter syndrome, and I'm not good enough, and I can't value myself enough. This is horrible, horrible. Why are we entrepreneurs again? Remind me.
We entrepreneurs because we can work in our pajamas when we want to. Okay, maybe that's one reason. I remember when I first started, and my husband at that stage was still working, has his own business as well. So I mean, that's also crazy in ours. And he said to me when I started, I was freaking out, and he was like, all you've done is gone from somebody else writing your paycheck to you writing your own paycheck. And I think that's why we're entrepreneurs, because effort equals reward. And I say that consistently, effort equals reward. The effort I put in, I will reap the reward. If I don't post on social media for 3 weeks, I'm not going to reap the reward. Do you know what I mean? If I was in a job, I would still get my salary, but my salary would be static. But if I then make a strategic decision to place emphasis into, let's say, a social media campaign to sell something, I could write the salary check that I would get for a year in 1 week. And I think that's why we're entrepreneurs. Do you know what I mean? And also, Pam, because let's ask you the question, I know it was one of the questions you asked me in the interview sheets is, would you ever go back to working for somebody else?
Sure, that's a loaded question. It does depend on circumstance, which I you're not supposed to be interviewing me. I think and it does depend on circumstance. So if it's to learn something new, if it's to figure out something, if it's to learn a new network, there's so much opportunity in working for other people. I mean, you'll know as well. Being an entrepreneur, one of my biggest things is that I'm a people person, so I need to connect with people. So I do the networking and I connect with people, and because it's very important to me. But you also tend to get very one-track minded in and going, this is who I'm going to connect with. When you go into a corporate environment, suddenly you're exposed to a whole bunch of different people or a whole different way of looking at something. So would I go back to work? It would be circumstantial. It definitely would need to be, who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? I always joke and say I couldn't go work. I get fired after a week. All right. Do you know what I mean? I've just become too independent. I've become too independent. I've always been independent, but it's kind of, I ask the questions that nobody else is willing to ask. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's my strength and my weakness. So I'd much rather get fired after a week. Unless my strategy was to get employed to get fired, maybe that's a strategy.
That's a good strategy. But also, don't you think, I mean, this seems to be the topic these days with people being employed and that sort of thing, that if you're going to be employed, that you need to be challenging the norms. Because if you're not, then why would anyone really, you know what I mean? You have to be looking at how to make things better and different and more efficient and more everything else. So, maybe you being employed is a good thing. Well, no, it's not. For the rest of us, you being employed is not a good thing. But for the employer, maybe.
It's also sometimes why I do take a freelance contract. Do you know what I mean? I'll take a freelance contract
yes.
Occasionally, because then what happens is, and I think that's what I loved about the freelance world also, I got to go into the organizations, be part of them, but I wasn't really working for them. So I got the best of both worlds. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of where I had freedom to work as much as I wanted to, but also to be exposed to what the thinking was. So it's sometimes what I do. I'll take on, if I'm currently doing a freelance contract for somebody every Friday. And the reason I'm doing it is just to kind of get the new thinking that they're thinking about. Like, what are some of the stuff they're thinking about? So I can bring it back to my network. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely such a because it is always that space when you are an entrepreneur. Do I go back to work for someone? Don't I? What are the benefits? What aren't the benefits? So, but if you have that opportunity to go into the freelance, you kind of have the benefit of both worlds, which is Really clever.
Yeah. Yes.
How do you sell yourself? How do you, as an entrepreneur, get yourself known, amongst your 20
Badly.
Badly.
So let's say this, all right. I use that word badly because I'm not brilliant at sales. I mean, people tell me that, like, yeah, people say to me, you are, but I don't believe that I am. Okay. And it's been something that I've struggled with. I've shied away from it, but I really understand fundamentally. I've been doing a lot of money mindset work in the last year, a lot of work on my own money mindset and stuff like that. And I'm getting better at it. So if you ask me how I sell in a couple of ways, all right? A lot of referral business, a lot of where I am referred by other people. A lot of my business comes from that. I hang out in Facebook groups where my ideal client hangs out. And Pam, I know you and I've been in a couple of those Facebook groups. And my selling is quite different to other people's selling. When somebody asks for something, I don't immediately go, oh, I have a program that does that, or work with me and I'll answer you that question. I'll answer the question that they're asking by adding value and then offering them the opportunity of talking to me offline. Do you know what I mean? Like, come offline and talk to me. And again, even when I'm speaking to them, then I won't do it as a sales conversation. I'm value driven. You know what I mean? Like, if I add value to you today, you will remember that. And when you're looking for somebody, you'll come back to me. You'll go back. And I've had that again and again, where somebody's come back 6 months later and said, I didn't have the opportunity to work with you then. I'd like to work with you now. So I really am a value salesperson, right? I also sell through things like this, through doing things like podcast interviews. I'm on Clubhouse, in some rooms for entrepreneurship. I do masterclasses in other people's memberships. I have my own membership, but I do masterclasses in other people's memberships. And so it's all that. So you can see it's value driven. Do you know what I mean? Like, let me give you value, because if you start to see my value, you're going to want to work with me. And that's really the way I sell. I'm not a cold salesperson who just goes out there. And interestingly enough, 1 or 2 things that I offer in my business are solely reserved for people who have worked with me. So there are offerings in my business that other people do not even know about, pure and simply because you don't get offered that because you haven't worked with me. Those are solely offered to people who've worked with me.
It's almost like your premium membership type thing.
Correct. And you can only get that once you've worked. So you wouldn't even know it existed. But if you wanted to work with me, I would say, look, understand that this and this. And if you did work with me, this becomes available to you then. You know what I mean? And then the people are like, but why don't you advertise that? And I'm like, because I don't want to advertise that. That's not the way I work. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's somebody that I've seen do it very successfully, and I'm emulating her. Do you know what I mean? I like the model. It's not overwhelming. So yeah, I sell through value, if that's, by adding value.
Yeah. But the thing is that I think that so many people who consider themselves to not be salespeople have an alternative way to sell, and yet you are selling with, and I mean, as you say, so many people have said that, yes, you are a great salesperson, but it's not because you're a cold calling salesperson. You've just found the right way to connect with your ideal client in the right way so that they buy into you, which ultimately means you're a brilliant salesperson. Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, and it is finding, so I'm currently running a program called Selling with Ease, Sales from the Feminine. All right. And interestingly enough, it's everything about that. It's kind of exactly what you said. I'm not asking the people to go out there and become cold salespeople. If they're not the kind of people who can do that, if they're not the kind of people who like, I mean, I know that you're brilliant at networking, but some people, that freaks them out to do that. Then I'm like, well, then don't go and do that. Then we find the other way for you to do it. But do it in a way that feels right for you, because when it feels right for you, it comes across in the right way. You know, like, yeah.
It's more genuine, isn't it?
Completely.
And I think that to me, there we go. Geez, you're giving me lots of homework without even realizing it. Is that because there's so many people that go, sales, you got to do sales, you got to do it, and here's the sales paint by number system, but there is no one paint by number system. Depends on you. Our network, this one does that one does that. Someone can do the cold calling, but it's about being, dare I say it, authentic, being real, being true to yourself, and doing what comes naturally. So I think that we are all naturally salespeople, just not what has traditionally been considered sales. That's all.
Yes. We all have an ability to sell, all right? And often we're selling when we don't even realize that we're selling.
Yes. Like now, we're both selling without even realizing it.
Exactly. It's that. It's the case of, but find that.
Yes.
So so I'll give you an example. You know, everybody, you said the paint by numbers. Everybody tells you must do Facebook Lives. Do you know what I mean? Like, people have to see you and you have to do Facebook Live. I have clients who literally have a stress reaction, like a huge stress reaction to doing a Facebook Live. I'm like, but then why are you doing them? All right.
Oh, because everyone said so.
Because everybody says I have to. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. Don't do it then. If you find writing is, you're brilliant at writing, then write beautiful social media posts. Never go live. Okay. If you like talking but you don't want anybody to see you, find a podcast, go onto to Clubhouse, do those kind of things. If you are video, now I like video, all right. I don't like video because I like the way I look, I must be honest. I like video because I talk with my hands and people get my energy off of video.
Yes.
So I prefer video, but I also write. So it's kind of, what's the happy medium? Where do you feel happy? Because when you feel happy, then you're calm. When you're calm, you come across as the authority and people connect. As simple as that.
Very clever. You see, I just think, oh, well, whatever goes naturally. But as you say, it's when you tick all the boxes. She is an authority. She's calm. She's relaxed. She knows what she's talking about. I can connect with her because of all those boxes. And that's fantastic. There we go. That's fantastic.
I say, yeah. You laughing. I've also got them. I'm sure your guys are going to come back and say to you, Diane, keep saying this word. All right. We've all got them.
Absolutely. But I love it. I've actually come to the realization that that's, once again, as we were saying earlier, your realness of who you are, so that people buy into who you are. And I like that. And right. Come on, Diane, let's go along and do whatever is needed to be done for my business, sort of thing, which is another selling point altogether. Okay, Diane, so this has been absolutely amazing. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I have to ask you, failures. Everyone is petrified of failure. What has been your greatest failure, or your worst failure? Sorry, not greatest, your biggest failure. And how have you come back from it? And what have you learned from it?
Sure, I've had lots. I've totally had lots. I think one of my biggest failures has been two, I want to say. First one is collabing with the wrong people, collaborating with the wrong people. And that comes back to that imposter syndrome, not trusting myself enough that I know exactly what I'm doing. Okay. So I need to bring in the expert. But then realizing halfway through that this expert knows less than I do, or this expert is completely different to what I am, and the client bought me and didn't buy them. Does that, I hope that makes sense.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
that's been one of my failures, is collaborating, and then so there's many instances, do you know what I mean, where I've collaborated, where I put far more in than the other person has, and then I'm pissy, do you know what I mean, because you're getting as much money as I am, but in actual fact, I'm the one doing all the flipping work here, and you're just riding the coattails. Or I'm just picking the wrong person, and we're so diabolically different to each other that the client, the client sees that, and then it becomes a sticky situation, because now the client either likes them or they like me. It doesn't matter. I mean, I've had it in both cases, where then I'm having to change myself to become like that person, and I don't like that. Do you know what I mean? So then I become pissy, okay? Or they having to change to the way that I work, but that's outside their comfort zone. So then our relationship becomes pissy. So I'd say collabs. I've learned a lot through that. And then the second one is going down the information rabbit hole has been my failure. Is not taking action soon enough has been a failure of mine. You know what I mean? Like I am a researcher by nature. So I'm wanting to research stuff, and I'm wanting to kind of do the things, and then it's not that it takes me long, but then I'm not quick off the mark enough. And then somebody else who's normally in my circle, well, I shouldn't say they're normally in my circle, but they kind of know what I'm doing. We've been in some kind of coaching thing together, and then they're taking my idea, and it's not their fault. It's my fault, because I haven't been quick enough off the mark. And I'd say those two are my biggest failures. Do you know what I mean? I've had to learn from that.
So would that, because having listened to what you've said earlier, do you think that stems a little bit from your imposter syndrome, that you go, well, I have to wait to be better or good enough, which I find a lot of people have told me the same, where you're waiting to be perfect. And once again, being perfect or just making it happen, which is the greater of the two evils. Waiting to be perfect means you might never ever do it. So I think that's one thing that keeps coming out.
Yeah. So I want to say this here. I heard something, I don't know when it was, but it was recently. And it was something that somebody posted, like, a caption, when you see a caption and it just fundamentally smacks you in the face. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like cold water going over you. And I can't remember who it was, but they posted this, and it had a blog post to go with it. And it went this: perfection costs you profit. And I was like, wow, okay, how many times have I allowed that? How many times have I allowed perfection to cost me profit, where I don't launch this thing because I want it to be perfect? And like you said, I've gone into the imposter syndrome place. How on earth can I do this? Do you know what I mean? There's 10 other people who are out there who are doing this. They better than me. So then I just don't launch. I have failure to launch. And I've written that at my desk. Do you know what I mean? Perfectionism costs profit. Because I need to look at it, and I need to see it and say, no, hang on, just press go, spelling mistakes be damned, whatever. Because isn't it better to get one client than to be perfect, and you're behind the curve then, if that's the thing, and then you get none?
So you can make mistakes. You can always go back and fix it. Nothing's ever cast in stone. I think
nothing is.
The one thing that we all need to learn. So yes, perfection costs you profit. I love that. I'm going to go Google it and find the blog. But that you don't do something and then you lose it, or you do something and if it's wrong, it doesn't matter. You can fix it. People are very forgiving, exceptionally so. Especially when you're authentic about the fact, oops, I made a mistake. Oh, let me go back and fix it.
Yeah, I've made one. I remember I made a huge mistake. I was working, now I'm going to make you laugh. Suppose if you had to ask me what's my biggest one mistake I made, but it's quite interesting because most people didn't pick it up, all right? But I have a client who is an absolute, I love her to bits, don't get me wrong, and I'm very grateful that she's in my life. So she emails me after I send out a newsletter, and she emails me after she sends out the newsletter, and she says to me, Diane, I think there's a mistake in your newsletter. And I'm like, what's the mistake? She goes, well, I clicked on the link to book the discovery call with you, and it took me to somebody else's website completely. All right. I said, what do you mean I took you to somebody else's website? So she goes, go and look on the thing. So I pull up the newsletter and I choose Bob. I go and click this. And what had happened was I was working in an accountability group. We were doing a co-working call, and I couldn't get this thing to work in my website, in my newsletter. And she quickly emailed me hers and said, no, I've done it 100 times. Here it is. And I plugged it in, but I didn't check the links. Do you know what I mean? Because I was, you know what it's like. It's busy, whatever.
Absolutely.
And I went, because I changed it to obviously my, you know what I mean, like my
Yes,
website.
but the hyperlink didn't change.
Oh my God. And I go and click, and there it takes me to, and she's a competitor. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's not really a competitor, but she does the same thing. And she's like, I'm sure you don't want to be sending people to somebody who does the same thing as you's website. I'm like, holy shit. Okay, so then I phone this woman and I say to her, she's in the UK. I didn't phone her. Yeah, I think I Skyped her or something quickly, and I said to her, oh my good God, if you get any discovery calls, what the hell are we going to do? And in actual fact, somebody did book a discovery call with her, and I said to her, well, take it. Do you know what I mean? It's my mistake. It's nothing I can do. But when I go back now to that, maybe edit all the rest out. But when you ask me what is the biggest mistake you've made, that's it. Do you know what I mean? Like that one. What did it teach me? Oh, hell, it taught me a shitload. All right. It taught me send out this thing to that client who found the mistake the first time. Send her the newsletter before anybody else. Let her check all your links. All right. Which I do now. And then only send it out. And I mean, I thought, now, do I send something saying I've made a mistake, or do I just leave it? What do I do? My list was quite small at that stage, so I just left it. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I'm just going to leave it and see, and it was fine. Do you know what I mean? Like it was cool, because in actual fact, 2 people did book discovery calls, but they just emailed me. They just literally responded on the thing and said, "Can I book a call?" I was like, "Thank you, Lord."
Brilliant.
Okay,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Brilliant. It's fine. But like you said, people are forgiving, you know, and people point out your mistakes, and you've got to thank them for doing that.
Absolutely. Wow. But that's, I love, not that you made the mistake, but the fact that you can admit it and go, I made a mistake. And we all do. It's part of the journey to make a mistake, to learn, and to keep getting better. But as you say, you've put things in place to make sure that you don't do it again. So you have them checked. So, you know, perfection first time round, no, but next time, definitely.
Update the process, as I call it. Update the process.
Update the process. Absolutely. Diane, any final words for entrepreneurs out there? What would be your biggest piece of advice for anyone wanting to start their own business?
I always say this to everybody, right? 2 things to people who are wanting to start their own business. If you have a cell phone and you've got an internet connection, that's all you need. That's all you need. That's all you need. All right. Cell phone and an internet connection. So don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Right. That's the first thing. And the second thing is most probably the bigger one. Surround yourself with like-minded people. And if you're a female entrepreneur, surround yourself with female entrepreneurs, because your family ain't going to get it. Your friends ain't going to get it. Okay. Those of us like you, Pam, and me, we get it. All right. We get it. We understand what you're going through. Right. And women, we've spoken a bit about it in the podcast, but women struggle with different things to what men do. So you need a tribe. You've got to find this tribe. Whatever that looks like for you, it doesn't really matter. All right. So those 2 things. And most probably the third one is invest in working with somebody as quickly as possible. Don't leave it to year 3, and when I say invest, it doesn't mean me. Please, I don't mean that at all. I just invest in your business from day one. Invest in working with somebody who's going to work alongside you and help you to gain that perspective of what you can't have in your business. So there's 3 things. Those would be my 3 messages for anybody starting a business.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think that all 3 of them, I've written them all down here. So, don't complicate it. Your tribe, and then invest in someone that can help you see the big picture. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Diane, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of feedback on this one. Thank you for joining us on I Work For Me.
It's an absolute pleasure. It was a great start to my Monday morning.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview and that you feel inspired to take your business to the next level. Please subscribe for more, connect with me and the community online at I Work For Me, and head over to the website for interesting reads and resources. If you like, you can support the team by buying them a coffee. Until next time, keep up the grind.